Combat Battle Reports, featuring Command Combat Civil War, the game for which this channel was named. Today we are doing the Battle of Blackburn's Ford, which is actually more of a skirmish. It's the precursor to the first Battle of Bull Run, the first major battle of the Civil War. And essentially the Federals were trying to make the Confederates think they were going to go this direction when they really were doing the main attack further north. But if they were able to break through here, they'd continue through. So it's a feint, but if they can actually push through, then they're going to follow through with it. You have two fords here, Blackburn's Ford, and I believe it's called Hatchett's Ford is the other one. And you've got two brigades so far on the table, Richardson and Sherman. Yes, it is that Sherman. And Tyler is the division commander. At this point, they don't have a corps commander, so he is under a red order throughout the thing, and the Confederates are under a blue order. They have Bonham and Longstreet. Longstreet turned out to be a really important general, and then they're led by Beauregard, who's also division commander. And so, although he can change his order, because he's one of the top generals in this, and but none of the others are. They're not corps commanders, so they have to roll their initiative, they roll their initiative to be able to go through. Anyway, so you see what their goal is. The Federals have a very difficult job. They're going to have one more brigade that they get to choose which road it comes in, and the Confederates will have one more brigade coming in. So it's going to be a real difficult one for the Federals. But, you know, actually the Confederates don't get a reinforcement until turn 5, and the Federals can bring on their other reinforcement whenever they want. So it's going to be up to them to do it early in the game. Let's see how it goes. End of turn 1, and there's already been some fire. Over here, Richardson's brigade moved up to here, got shot up by that infantry and artillery, and had to pull back almost off the table. Their artillery fired back, didn't do anything, while meanwhile their other artillery is going into the woods over here. Over here, Sherman is moving forward, just continuing in march column because there's nothing that can shoot at him. He's followed up by all of his artillery, and they chose to bring Schenck in that direction. So, watch for them going down that road at that ford, and this one, it's going to be quite a challenge. End of turn 2, and it's very similar to last turn. Although over here, Tyler has gone up to his troops to help them, and it has helped them at least stay where they are, not pull back. They are still in disorder. They chose not to even try to get into order. They wanted to get moving further away from that horde edge. They don't rout off the table. Although doing that, they lost some more troops. They're getting hit by that infantry and artillery. Although you'll notice the artillery's turned away. That means they've been silenced. They have been shot at by the infantry and both artillery, which is having difficulty hitting them, but it did cause the crew to run away from their gun for the moment. So it's just been silenced for a little while. Over here, they still don't have a target. Actually, you'll see how they're kind of behind woods, and this may seem crazy that the Confederates would do this, but actually, historically, that's what Longstreet did. He set sort of an ambush. Usually in tactics back then, you'd stand out in an open field. In fact, many Napoleonic battles were in big open fields. But some of the better commanders, Longstreet included, realized that they're outgunned and they're not going to last very long out in the open. So they put themselves in these situations. He's sort of the first one to try this ambush thing, where instead of meeting them toe-to-toe, he set up a trap so that when they came in, they'd hit them. Now in this game, we can see that they're there. Historically, though, they didn't necessarily know too much about their positions, and they came out and got kind of hit. We'll see how it goes next turn. And it continues, and the Federals are moving into these woods. This is a little bit of the meta thinking, because they wouldn't have necessarily known that the Confederates were there. Also, fighting at that time, the strategy usually would have been to go out into the open and fight them, because that was the more manly way of doing it. But we know now, cover is good. So they went into these woods and are going to go in that way, it looks like. Schenck is moving in these woods over here. They're moving the artillery around, sort of to do a roundabout like that and maybe attack them that way, I believe. Over here on the Union right, it's sort of the same type of thing, although this time they didn't take any casualties, but they did pull back. They got into order and then got disordered again, and same over here, they got back to their guns, but got shaken again, silenced again. Meanwhile, over here, the Confederate infantry went low on ammo. They're just firing so much. But they actually have tents over here so they can resupply, which is more than the Federals can say. The Federals actually don't have any wagons in this particular scenario, so they won't be able to resupply if they run out. A pretty harsh turn for the Federals. Once again, the exchange of fire is happening over here, and the Confederate artillery got silenced, but now they have their commander there that's sort of keeping them from completely routing. In fact, they might have been close to routing had he not gone there. Over here, there was exchange of fire. They got hit bad enough that their morale caused them to pull back by 1 inch. But what's a major problem, you may have noticed, the commander is down. That's because he had a dramatic death. In fact, the death was the worst it could possibly be. They rolled a 10, which is death seen by all, meaning the morale got worse for everyone, including the artillery. Now, the artillery passed, but yeah, they're kind of in bad shape now. They won't be able to do anything next turn. They're going to go to a blue order, actually, which is going to cause major problems over here. Yeah, so they won't be able to actually attack. They'll be able to just kind of fight where they are. And they're going to also need to get a new commander to choose what to do. So the Federals are holding on the left and pushing on the right, although not pushing very far, because they can only be in a blue order, which means defend. Since the commander has died, they have to all go into blue order. You can only switch back to red order now if they roll a 1, which would be the initiative of a brigade. And this is the only brigade that was in range that could take over. So they have just taken over this turn. They have moved out of range of the Confederate infantry, so they can't be hit by them. Their artillery is set up and has actually done half a stand of damage to the Confederate artillery. Not only silenced them, but that white puff means that stand is half damaged now, so that will at least keep that a little bit harder to hit the Union infantry, but it still will hurt their morale once it gets going again. Now here's this infantry there. They went low on ammo. They have ammo coming to them from the tents over there. Over on the right side, the 2 brigades of the Federals have lined up against the 1 brigade of the Confederates. They're firing at each other across the river from the tree lines, and both just basically exchanging fire. The Union has done a little bit more damage to the Confederates. They actually did a little bit of damage there, but did not cause them to pull back. The Confederates didn't do any damage. The Federals just sort of did some morale damage. The Federals, meanwhile, have their artillery set up as well. So you're going to see them both pushing away there. Oh, also the Confederates went low on ammo on their artillery, so they're going to have a supply problem because they're getting from the tents, and they only have 3 ammo markers to send out. So they might just run the Confederates out of ammo just with their bodies. And the game is basically over for the Federals. We're going to keep on going just to see more of this, but they're just not going to be able to push forward. You'll notice this brigade is now gone. They rolled enough morale that they were pushed off the table. They didn't take any damage, but they were shot at again and ran off the table. But their artillery got revenge by taking out the Confederate artillery, which caused them to go off the table. So at least they had that going for them, but now you have this Confederate infantry that has no more worries at this ford. So they're going to be able to pull over to this side where all this is going on. Now, you have Sherman's brigade versus Longstreet's brigade. Sherman's brigade definitely got the better of it. They actually destroyed an entire stand, which is actually quite a bit in this. Caused Longstreet's brigade to pull back. Sherman's brigade did pull back as well, but nowhere near as far. I actually shouldn't say nowhere near as far, but they didn't pull back as far. And so actually Sherman's getting the better of them. But the Confederates now have 2 more brigades that they're going to be able to bring into there. I mean, the Federals still have these 2 brigades and this artillery, but they still are in a blue order. In fact, they're going to be required to stay in it for at least 1 more turn while they find another commander. So it's not going to be a lot of pushing forward, but we'll just see how it goes for a little bit longer. On to the next turn, and it is all about the right. Early has moved up into this wheat field and has been hit by this artillery. Both of those pieces of artillery didn't do any damage to them to speak of, but it did cause them to go into disorder. Longstreet was not able to get his troops into order, so they just stayed where they were, where they couldn't be shot at. So they'll get into order next turn. This brigade is starting to move over to this side. This artillery was all alone up there, and so they got silenced. I guess the men just decided to pull back along with the infantry, where they couldn't be shot at. I don't blame them. This Federal infantry was just stayed up there and shot. Sherman had moved up to the front, got hit again, and so his men really pulled back to the edge of that, the other side of those woods. And just went, oh, you said go to the edge of the woods, so they went to the other edge of the woods. You know, just going, screw this. Anyway, the Federal artillery over here has switched position, and this one has gotten limbered. Now, it could try to move across and actually win by getting over there. That is, like I say, their goal, but they'd be pretty well captured right away if it's unsupported artillery. Anybody who knows military stuff knows that's not a very good idea. On to the next turn, and everybody just basically get into position to do as much damage to the enemy as they possibly can. Especially since it's pretty clear the Federals aren't going to be able to get across this creek. But let's take a look. Alright, so over here, the Confederates have set up on their side of the creek over here. They could have moved further over, but Longstreet's already over there, and right here they already have an enemy. So they got into position, fired across, did a little bit of damage to the Federal line. But, you know, they're holding steady. Sherman got his men back together and is starting to get up to the line again. Longstreet has gotten his men together and are starting to move up there. Now over here, these guys early saw that his men were getting shot at by the artillery, so he shifted his men into the woods over there. Beauregard's just basically holding his position. The Federals have set up some artillery here that can fire down this line, and essentially they are going to help support. But actually, there's some artillery here too, so it's basically everybody's going to fire into this one region right here in the center, basically where nobody can cross. And we are at the end of the movement phase of this turn. This is going to be the last turn unless there's something the Federals can do. So I just wanted to show where everybody is in their position before they fire, because basically whether or not this game is going to continue is dependent upon whether or not the Federals do much damage. So you'll be able to watch before the fire and afterwards to really compare. So here's where the lines are in relations to one another. That's the infantry brigades and the Confederate artillery. Going back a little more, you can see the Federals have their artillery on the flanks, and the Confederates also have an infantry brigade up there on the right. They all moved in position. This is where they're going to be when they fire, and it's just going to be a whole lot of fire all along the line there. And the future of this game is going to depend on what happens with this particular firing. Well, fascinating turn of events. As you can see along this line, the Federals have held their position and the Confederates have not. Actually, their artillery has, but their two brigades have pulled back. And they're not routing, but they've pulled back, while the Federals have held their position and done some damage to them. In fact, they've taken more off of Longstreet's brigade and off of this other brigade. Didn't do anything over here on the right, but they did well on their trading fire. And then look at this. They rolled a 1, which means they can change their order to red, which is exactly what they're going to do. So they're going to try this one more time, see if they can get across that ford. It all comes down to that. We're going to be on the last 2 turns here, so we'll see if it works. Well, the Federal shooting is on fire here at the end of the game. I guess they were fed up with losing on this one. So let's take a look at this. As they charge across, they had the help of this brigade that was here. They were actually at the edge of the woods, and you had Longstreet here at the end. Maybe I should have taped this before the fire phase, but anyway, you had Longstreet here, brigade here, and that infantry here. Now, they were blocking the artillery, but it was just enough actually to give a little bit of firepower, caused damage to them. Took the Longstreet's brigade took some damage, and it caused them to pull back a little ways, almost into that other brigade, which is still in disorder. This artillery had just practically took a pot shot at this artillery and took out half a stand, as you can see once again. This artillery here fired over here and did a little bit of damage. As you can see, they're getting whittled down. Meanwhile, they fired at Sherman's brigade and did not actually take them out. Sherman's brigade is actually moving across. In fact, I just remembered they get an extra inch because Sherman's brigade actually has a bonus for moving across terrain like that. So as we move into the last turn, Sherman might actually get through here. It won't mean they necessarily win, but it definitely gives them points. Well, an exciting climax to a game we thought was long since over. We are in the charge phase, and Sherman has gotten up onto the shore and charged into Longstreet's brigade, and in fact has actually caused them to pull back and has run into this other brigade that was right next to it. And you have Beauregard right there behind him. He's trying to keep him steady. He's already used his command points to try to keep Longstreet's brigade in line, but did not succeed, and Sherman is actually pushing right up into him. This might actually come through for the Federals. We're going to see at the end of this, but we wanted to come to you mid-turn for this very exciting charge. And it just keeps getting more exciting. The melee continues. Longstreet has taken a bit of damage and is pulled out of the fight. Now it is between Sherman and Bonham, and they are locked in combat, both of them taking casualties, and neither one giving up the field. They are continuing this melee. We'll see how it goes. This will decide the battle, folks. And that will end it. The Federals put up a valiant effort, but the charge ultimately failed. You can see they had 9 morale on there. They rolled a 2. That was a major failure. They went running. The Confederates had 9, and so they held. Bonham held where he was, even though Longstreet had pulled back. Sherman's men went running back across Blackburn's ford, and so they failed to get across. There's still more firing that could be done, but that's where we're going to leave it, just purely because that was really the big chance. So great valiant effort on the side of the Federals. Almost made it, came within a hair's breadth, but didn't quite make it. The Confederates held where they were, and they've won a lot this season. I'm not sure quite why, but anyway, that'll do it for us here on Command Combat Battle Reports. We appreciate you watching. Be sure to subscribe, tell all your friends, and check out Command Combat Civil War as well. Happy gaming, everybody!